In a quiet suburban neighborhood, life was supposed to be simple. People followed the rules, enjoyed their morning coffee, and kept to themselves. But when Janice Cutter, the new HOA chairperson, arrived in Glenwood Pines, everything changed. With her strict, unyielding rules and relentless scrutiny, she pushed the residents to their breaking point. But when she crossed the line with Grandma Margaret, a storm of defiance was unleashed. What followed would shake the very foundation of their community. This is the story of the Rosebush Revolution. Stay tuned. In the peaceful suburb of Glenwood Pines, life followed a predictable, easy rhythm. The streets were lined with charming homes, neatly manicured lawns, and the faint hum of suburban tranquility. It was a place where mornings began with the chirping of birds, and evenings faded into the soft glow of streetlights. For 84-year-old Margaret Henderson, life had settled into a comforting routine. Every morning, she sat on her porch, rocking gently in her chair, sipping her mocha, and enjoying the quiet of the world around her. It was her time of peace, a brief escape from the world's chaos. But everything changed when Janice Cutter arrived. Janice was the new chairperson of the Glenwood Pines Homeowners Association, HOA, and she had a vision of pristine order, uniformity, and total control. Armed with a clipboard and a long list of infractions, she marched through the neighborhood, eager to enforce rules that, for the most part, only existed in her mind. From wind chimes to mailbox colors, nothing was safe from her scrutiny. One Thursday morning, as Grandma Margaret sat on her porch, sipping her beloved mocha, Janice arrived. She stormed up the walkway, her clipboard in hand, her sharp gaze scanning everything with disapproval. She glanced over at Grandma, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight of the coffee cup in her hand. "That," Janice said coldly, pointing at the mocha, "is a violation." Margaret blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked, genuinely confused. "You are in violation of HOA standards." Janice snapped. "Public consumption of store-bought coffee is not permitted. It's not the image we want for this community." Grandma Margaret looked at her cup, then back at Janice, trying to comprehend what she was hearing. "I've been drinking my coffee out here for years," she said gently. "It's just a little cup of mocha." But Janice was unmoved. "It's a public display of commercialism," she said, as if that explained everything. "And it's against the HOA's unwritten guidelines." Margaret shook her head in disbelief. "This is absurd." Ignoring Margaret's words, Janice's frustration flared. "You're disrupting the neighborhood with your casual coffee drinking." And with that, she reached forward, slapping the coffee cup out of Margaret's hands, sending the hot mocha flying. It splashed across the porch and soaked into Margaret's lap, staining her sweater. The hot liquid burned her skin. But it was the insult to her dignity that hurt the most. A silence hung in the air. The neighborhood, quiet as it had been for years, suddenly felt like an arena. But just as the tension built, a car screeched to a halt in front of the house. Travis Henderson, Margaret's 250-pound former linebacker nephew, stepped out. He was a diesel mechanic with a presence that made people take a step back. His face hardened when he saw the scene before him, his elderly aunt, soaked in coffee. Staring at Janice in shock, without a word, Travis marched up the steps. He grabbed Janice by the shoulders and, in a single swift motion, picked her up and slammed her into the rose bushes lining the walkway. The thorns tore at her clothes, and she screamed in shock as she crashed into the prickly plants. For a moment, the neighborhood stood frozen. Janice lay in the bushes, humiliated, while Travis, his expression unreadable, turned and walked back up the stairs. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He simply sat beside his aunt, who was still in a daze. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the wind. Margaret stared at her nephew, her lips parted in disbelief. I didn't mean for it to go that far," Travis muttered, sitting next to her. Margaret looked at him and, despite the gravity of the situation, smiled. I think you did exactly what was needed. The moment was over, but its weight lingered. Janice, furious and humiliated, staggered to her feet, trying to regain her composure. Her shoes were gone, lost in the chaos, and her pride had been shattered. Slowly, she turned and walked away, but the drama was far from finished. The following day, flyers appeared on every door in the neighborhood. They were official HOA complaints. Travis was accused of unprovoked bodily force, and Margaret was cited for her hostile porch posture. The HOA had no limits when it came to maintaining their iron grip on the community. The fines were steep, and the consequences were severe. The Hendersons were not the only ones to suffer. The HOA, led by Janice, began targeting other residents, citing minor infractions with absurd fines. Neighbors were threatened for leaving their trash cans out too long or not trimming their hedges to exact specifications. People began to fear their own homes. But not everyone was willing to back down. Joey, Margaret's politically savvy grandson, saw an opportunity. He began gathering evidence, speaking with other residents who had been unfairly targeted. He recorded stories of HOA overreach and the corruption that ran beneath the surface. It wasn't just the fines. Janice was using her position to funnel money into her own personal benefits, including extravagant perks paid for by the community's dues. As the days passed, the tension in the neighborhood grew. The people were beginning to rally behind Margaret, who, despite her quiet nature, had become a symbol of defiance. On the day of the HOA's emergency meeting, the residents of Glenwood Pines gathered, waiting for the chance to confront Janice. When Janice arrived at the meeting, she was met with an icy reception. The residents had turned the tables on her, and it was clear that her authority was crumbling. Joey presented the evidence. They had gathered a list of violations and shady dealings, including Janice's private massage chair funded by HOA dues. It was a damning exposé that left Janice no room to recover. In a dramatic twist, as Janice tried to defend her actions, a video surfaced of her tantrum with Margaret. The footage of Janice slapping the coffee out of Margaret's hands went viral, and the backlash was swift. The residents of Glenwood Pines, empowered by the truth, voted to oust Janice as HOA chairperson. The meeting was a victory not just for Margaret, but for the entire community. For the first time in years, the people of Glenwood Pines felt a sense of unity, knowing they had reclaimed their neighborhood from the oppressive rule of an overreaching HOA. In the days that followed, the transformation of the neighborhood was nothing short of remarkable. People who had once been isolated in their homes, fearful of the HOA, now began to come together. They held meetings in Margaret's front yard, sharing stories and laughter, rebuilding the sense of community that had been lost. The Rosebush Revolution had begun, and Glenwood Pines was no longer a neighborhood of fear. It was a place of freedom. The story ended with a plaque in the neighborhood park, commemorating the bravery of Margaret Henderson and the resilience of the community. The plaque simply read, "Sometimes it takes one act of defiance to change the world." The Rosebush Revolution, 2023. And in the end, the community realized that when people stand together, no force, no matter how powerful, can crush their spirit. Justice had been served, and the power of unity had won the day.